You are listening to Talking Africa, the podcast that deconstructs the news from the continent, brought to you by the Africa Report magazine. My name is Nick Norbrook. You can block me on Twitter at Nick Norbrook. For more on the Africa Report, sign up to our daily bulletin. Head to theafricareport.com for more. Today we're talking about South Africa, and we're drilling down into President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation speech, which he delivered yesterday, and it was either a dreamscape or a nightmare, depending on who you listen to. Joining us as we don our headlamp and jump into the mineshaft of discontent that is South African politics at the moment is our Southern Africa editor, Crystal Orderson, and our editor-in-chief, Patrick Smith. They say when you're writing a speech, Crystal, that you start low and you finish strong. Do you think President Ramaphosa read the instructions the wrong way around?
I think so, because he started within the first 30 seconds, of his speech, reminded us of the 1913 Land Act, referred to Saul Plaatje, and, that this was actually the day that the Natives Land Acts, which was one of the most devastating acts of dispossession, came into force. So there was very high expectation from the land issue. He went straight into the economy and really highlighting and just giving us a sense that, he knows that things are tough. The election campaign where he crisscrossed South Africa, and people spoke to him about the challenges of poverty, of unemployment, of going to bed without food. He spoke straight to those points and that he was going to make a difference. But when it came to the action plan, I think that's when it all seemed to have fallen flat.
The sort of the headline item was Eskom, and it's what everyone was hoping to get some clarity on. And he had already mentioned Eskom in a previous State of the Nation address, and had mentioned things like breaking it up, mentioned more money. In this address, he promised 230 billion rand. I think everyone agrees that it needs to be bailed out, but no one can really figure out where this money is coming from. What are the sort of commentariat saying?
Well, I think so. Firstly, we know that Eskom is basically one of the state-owned entities that really has been bailed out continuously over the past few years. And we've heard everyone, including the president, reminding us that it's too big to fail. And so again, he was saying that right now Eskom only has enough cash until the end of October, which means that, there's some serious trouble brewing if there's no more money. So therefore, he's saying there's going to be a special appropriation bill, which is quite urgent. And on that basis, the allocation of around 230 billion rand fiscal support that the Eskom will be required. This bill will deal with that. Now, what does that mean? So the Director General of Treasury, Mr. Dondo, he spoke about it and he says, look, Eskom, there's serious financial problems at the utility, and basically it cannot be ignored, or they cannot default on the loan. So Treasury is looking at this appropriations bill, which will have to go to Parliament. It will have to go through the committee process. It will have to go for public commentary, which is quite a lengthy process. But they see this, unfolding in the next few weeks, because the 450 billion rand debt that Eskom has is really, is really troubling, and the state has to intervene. So at the moment, they feel that is their priority. We do know, the CEO has resigned, Mr. Khadebe, and Mr. Ramaphosa again reiterated that, the chairperson, Jabu Mabuza, he's leading the board and he's doing a great job. But we do know that COSATU, which is one of the allies of Cyril Ramaphosa, have not been happy with the board composition and also the chairperson, Jabu Mabuza. So clearly, Mr. Mabuza will stay on at Eskom. And that secondly, they'll be appointing a chief restructuring officer, and that person is supposed to reposition Eskom. Now, quite interestingly enough, we were all wondering where Maria Ramos, the former ABSA CEO who resigned abruptly, where she will be going. There was talk of her going to SARS. That is, of course, not happening. So now the question will be, might this position be hers? That will obviously we'll know in the next few weeks. So again,
she's done that before, has she not? She was responsible for restructuring Transnet, I think, back in the day.
Yes, she was, and she didn't have a lot of fans there because she had also sold one of South Africa's crown jewels, which is the waterfront, and it was bought back later again, back by the Public Investment Corporation. So there's mixed reaction to if she should be appointed. But, that's obviously, I think, a name to watch out. But I think interestingly enough, the president focused a lot on Eskom, but no other state-owned entity received the same naming in the likes of South African Airways, SABC.
He didn't use the P word, privatization, at any point, because I thought when he delivered the State of the Nation address in February, he talked about splitting Eskom up into these three entities. And again, he didn't talk about selling stuff off to private sector, but he did seem to indicate that private money would come in. Did he say anything about that at all? And that's the big issue with the unions, isn't it? They don't accept this idea of bringing private money into Eskom.
Absolutely. So the P word was not mentioned once. Uh-huh. And that, of course, means that we've heard that Eskom has to be, it's going to be split up in three, and that will mean, job creation. But we've also heard several times from COSATU that they will not allow that to happen. And so it's interesting that he's chosen not to even mention any particular or any specifics around how we're going to deal with the state-owned entities. He spoke about, there's going to be a council that's going to deal with all the SOEs. But I do think even COSATU, in their reaction to the State of the Nation, they said that they were, in fact, very worried that there was no clear plan to save and stabilize like the SABC, like the arms manufacturer Denel, like South African Airways. And they say they will be watching at what's happening, and they feel that the leadership and the instability there is quite alarming. And they also say, look, we are going to fight if there's going to be any retrenchment, not only at Eskom, but at any other state-owned entities. So I do think, again, here, Cyril chose his words very carefully, and the fact that he did not even mention the P word once, or even that Eskom will have to be, there's going to be three entities, not one mention of that either. So one wonders that if he's keeping that for the actual ministers to announce and, be giving the nation more clarity and more detail on those things. But he just, that P word was simply not even mentioned once in that hour, 20 minutes and 17 pages of speech that he delivered.
Did he say where the 230 billion rand or $16 billion needed for Eskom over the next 10 years? Did he say where that's coming from? I mean, presumably they're going to go on the markets and borrow that.
I think that's been part of the criticism of his speech, is that he didn't give us any particular detail of where this money is coming from. So it's almost like he's warning us of things to come, but he's not giving us the exact nature of this is what we're going to do. So he started, for instance, in that paragraph, saying, the financial position of Eskom remains a matter of grave concern. And then he tells us about the fiscal support and that, reminding us that Eskom is too vital for our economy and it cannot be allowed to fail. And then he simply says the Minister of Finance will provide details in due course. So again, it's like he puts it out there, but he doesn't give us any details of how exactly this is going to happen. And that, of course, is worrying, because we have to ask, where is this money going to come from? That is only one amount for one state-owned entity. But what about the others that are also in dire straits, which brings to, it has to be raised then. Does it mean that we are going to look at semi-privatization of this other state-owned entities?
One of the other hot button issues was the fate of the central bank, South Africa's Reserve Bank. We had the spat a few weeks ago after the ANC gathering. All the top brass of the ANC went for their policy retreat, and I think it was during the press conference that the Secretary General, Ace Magashule, he sort of threw out this idea of nationalizing the Reserve Bank. There was this firestorm of debate. The rand tanked. You mentioned the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. He slapped that down pretty quickly. Is that still the message? Are they holding a single line on that now?
Nick, I wish I could tell you there's a single line, and just listening to the president, listening to what the Treasurer General Paul Mashatile said after the reaction to his speech, speaking to Ace Magashule, speaking to Julius Malema, I must be honest that I am more confused than ever. So we hear the president saying, it is, the constitutional mandates of the Reserve Bank is to protect the value of our currency in the interest of, sustainable growth. And he's reaffirming this mandate that the Reserve Bank must pursue its mandate independently without fear, favor, or prejudice. And that, there'll be regular consultations between the Reserve Bank and the Minister of Finance. So that's what we hear. Then we ask the Treasurer General, Paul Mashatile, reaction. He's like, yes, so this is what the president's saying. The Reserve Bank is independent. It's, there'll be regular consultations, but we do not touch this. We ask Ace Magashule the same question, and he says, well, we won't, yes, the president is clear about the mandate, but the position at Nasrec, which is the ANC conference, was that the nationalization of the Reserve Bank has to happen. And he's not changing from that position. And he was basically telling us we shouldn't be misquoting the president, but the nationalization of the Reserve Bank is still on the table because that's ANC policy. So this is now in the space of a half an hour, Nick, that we hear the top six again, some speaking with one voice, some reaffirming what the president's saying. And Ace Magashule, the Secretary General, the same man that talked about quality easing instead of quantitative easing, is again reminding us, but we haven't changed our position on the nationalization of the Reserve Bank. So I just think this is what, makes everything really, just of course, as a citizen, but as a journalist, so confusing. These mixed messages that you get from ANC leadership regarding the Reserve Bank. So what is my reading out of this? Yes, Cyril Ramaphosa as the president has given us the line, the independence of the Reserve Bank. It's the Minister of Finance and the Reserve Bank governor that will speak on policy. But clearly Ace Magashule is telling me and telling other journalists, well, it's not that easy. We're not finished with this issue yet. And I do suspect it's not something that is going to just be quiet. This is going to be a constant contestation. And I think this is part of what we see is that as much as Cyril Ramaphosa is the president of the ANC, he's the president of the country, not everyone seemingly is totally behind what he's driving.
It does play into this narrative that there are these two very distinct camps within the ANC, a sort of a self-styled progressive camp around Cyril Ramaphosa, and then those who they've kind of jumped on the agenda of the EFF in some respects. Previously they backed Zuma, maybe they still back him today, who knows? And and they have some pretty powerful positions, which makes all these promises that Ramaphosa might want to make slightly questionable. With that